My name is Instructor Sams, and I look forward to working with you in this English 102 Summer Session B course. To get you started off, as you're going through all of the different course materials on our Blackboard content and our Blackboard shell, I want to give you a brief reading strategy of mine that I believe will help you as you begin interacting with these materials. Okay, and I'm actually drawing on this from your ebook. Make sure you have and are actively reading your ebook, The McGraw-Hill Guide to Writing, on page 14. Here they define exactly what the authors mean by reading critically, and this is something that I want you to be practicing with all of the course material, assignment sheets, essays, chapters from the ebook, etc. Vlogs from me, everything, critically. Here it is. What does it mean to read critically? One thing reading critically does not mean is to be nitpicky or negative. Rather, when you read a text critically, you question what you read, make connections to other texts you have read and to your own experiences, and you think about how the information in the text might help you as you develop your own writing. To read critically means to read thoughtfully, to keep in mind what you already know, and to interact actively with the text. Critical readers underline, make notes, ask questions out loud as they read. I find this description very useful, and it helps me to think about approaching the text as if it were an active communication or conversation rather than a delivery system of information. Okay? So you can think about that conversation and the act of conversation as taking place between the author, the reader, and any other voices that the author brings in. And this happens anytime you're interacting with the text. And I want you to sort of hone your senses to be paying attention for this. If you do, and you practice such careful reading, it's almost the same thing as building connections at a conference table, engaging with other ideas and learning from those ideas and reflecting on other people's ideas in relation to your own, and as you further develop and expand upon your own. I want to leave you with an excerpt from a novelist, Neil Gaiman. He's talking here about the act of writing fiction, but also prose. I think his description really elucidates the exchange that takes place between the writer and reader. And I think it might be helpful as you begin to think about writing critically in 102, reading critically, and writing analytically in English 102. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit closer, pull up, and read this. It's, again, Neil Gaiman, and this excerpt is from an essay in A View from the Cheap Seats, which I will link to you below. When I was a boy, we had a garden. Mr. Weller was 85, and he came in every Wednesday, and he did the things in the garden. The roses grew, vegetable garden put forth vegetables as if by magic. In the garden shed, every kind of strange hoe and spade and trowel and dibber hung, and Mr. Weller alone knew what they were good for. They were his tools. I get fascinated by the tools. The miracle of prose is this. It begins with the words. What we as authors give to the reader isn't the story, complete. We don't give them the people or the places or the emotions. What we give the reader is a raw code, a rough pattern, loose architectural plans that they use to build the book themselves. No two readers can or will ever read the same book because the reader builds the book in collaboration with the author. I don't know if any of you have ever had the experience of returning to a beloved childhood book, a book that you remember a scene from so vividly, something that was etched onto the back of your eyeballs when you read it. And you remember the rain whipping down, you remember the way the trees blow in the wind, you remember the whinnies and the stamps of the horses as they fled through the forest to the castle, and the jingle of the bits and every noise. And you go back and you read that book as an adult, and you discover a sentence that says something like, "Oh, what a jolly awful night this would be," he said as they rode their horses through the forest. "I hope we get there soon." And you realize that you did it all. You built it. You made it. Some of the tools that hang in the garden shed of a writer are tools that help us as writers to understand what the patterns are. They teach us how to work with our collaborators, because the reader is a collaborator. We ask ourselves the big question here about fiction because they are the only ones that matter. What's it for? What's the imagination for? Why do we do this? Does it matter? Why does it matter? Again, I know he's talking about fiction here, but I'd argue that you could say the same for any writing. Why will your project one matter? Who is going to read it? Who are you collaborating with? And why? For what purpose? Sure, you're writing it for a class, but beyond the grade, why should your writing exist? Okay, so again, I want you to be thinking about reading critically as you interact with a lot of material on this upcoming few days. I also want you to be thinking about who your collaborators might be, who your readers will be, and why you're writing for them. And this is a brief introduction to the idea of the rhetorical context, which you'll be reading about more. Okay. Nice to meet you all, and please don't hesitate to ever be in touch with me via email if you'd like to set up a Google Hangouts appointment, or just come hang out with me every Wednesday from 12 to 1. We can have a little chat or interact like this, okay? My email is listed here again below. I'm always looking forward to getting your feedback from these resources that I'm providing from you.